Oh, good evening, and welcome back to the Poe Museum. Here in the museum's reference library, you never know what you'll find in the pages of a good book. I'm not just talking about autographs, I'm talking about the sort of things that previous owners have left behind.
And that will be the subject of tonight's installment of the Curator's Crypt.
Well, here's the first item. This is a collection of Poe's works. In fact, it's the first posthumous collection of Edgar Allan Poe's works. And even on the title page, it says the works of the late Edgar Allan Poe, because he just died in 1849, and the first 3 volumes of this were available in 1850. So this is right after Poe's death. It was edited by Poe's literary executor, Rufus Griswold, who, as you probably know from previous videos, hated Poe. So he wrote a biography that portrayed Poe as a madman, a horrible, despicable, evil person. He thought this would destroy Poe's reputation. And people immediately came to Poe's defense, including Poe's friend and former boss, George Rex Graham, the editor of Graham's magazine. And Graham published an article in Graham's saying this is a pack of lies that Griswold's spreading. Poe wasn't nearly as bad as Griswold says. In fact, Griswold, he's the scoundrel, a liar himself. And the first owner of this collection, back in 1850, apparently read that article, because that's what we found in here. Tucked in the pages were these pages torn from Graham's magazine, including George Rex Graham's article responding to the depiction of Poe published in this collection. So hopefully the owner of that got a much better impression of Poe's life from what Graham later had to write about him than what old Rufus did. And next up, we have a few copies of this one. This is The Home Life of Poe. It's sort of an insider's view of what Poe is like if you knew him personally and spent time with him. It's by Susan Archer Weiss, who Poe would have known as Susan Archer Talley. And she was a neighbor of Poe's sister. They spent a lot of time together. And when Poe was in town, Talley invited Poe to her house where he read The Raven. And we do have, of course, a copy signed by the author right there, Susan Archer Weiss. And it's kind of an interesting book because she loves Poe. She's a huge Poe fan, and she really seems to dislike his fiancée Elmira Shelton and his wife Virginia. And I'm wondering what was the source of information. She'd never even met Poe's wife, but I think Poe's sister was spreading her opinion of Poe's wife, and maybe that's what appears in this book. So we've got a couple different copies, but this is the one that I'd like to show you. And this is not signed by Susan Archer Talley Weiss. In fact, we do know it belonged to Anne Bachman Hyde, who was born in 1868 in Tennessee, and she married a preacher and traveled all over the country, but she spent several years in Richmond. And she compiled a little Poe scrapbook. The opening page of this should be blank like this, right? But she has filled it with clippings. And since the book was published right about 1907, most of these clippings are from about that time or earlier. The earliest clipping in here is from 1860. So this is a big Poe fan clipping, poems about Poe. But this is one of the pieces I really like. She got somebody whose mother had gone to school with Poe's sister to write a little account of what it was like to be at one of Poe's readings. You want me to read it for you? Well, I'll do it anyway. My mother attended the same school in Richmond with Miss Rosalie Poe, the sister of the poets. I have often heard my mother relate that at a social gathering of literary friends one evening, the poet was reading and reciting The Raven. And when he reached the lines, "In there stepped a stately raven," Miss Rose entered the door frame of an adjoining room. She was tall and gaunt and homely, and the striking coincidence caused an audible smile among the company. So that's Rosalie Poe walking into the room, and just everybody looks, oh, she looks like a big raven, I guess.
She looks like a bird.
And there's also all sorts of other articles in here. There's an obituary from one of Poe's childhood friends right here, Dr. Creed Thomas. And the obituary says a little bit about Creed Thomas, but starting about here, it just talks about his friendship with Edgar Allan Poe and how they went swimming in the James River together. And in the back here, there's a photograph taken by Anne B. Hyde of the Van Loo mansion. Elizabeth Van Loo was best known as a Union spy. She organized a whole spy ring here in the capital of the Confederacy during the Civil War. But she was also a friend of Poe's, and he gave a reading at her house. So that's why she's mentioned in the book and why we have a photo there. And the other picture here was taken by a professional photographer, Eustace Cook. And Anne Hyde writes down here that I took this Kodak picture in 1898, I think. The one above was by Cook of Richmond. And all throughout the book, where ordinarily you think there would be illustrations, not really illustrations, so she just glues illustrations she cut out of other articles or books to liven up this book a little bit. So it's no wonder that Anne Hyde became a historian, an author, an archivist, even though ideally we don't recommend gluing things into your books like this. At least she helped preserve these. So this isn't just a biography of Poe. It's kind of a scrapbook. And it's a record of one Poe fan's archive and her interest in researching to learn more about Poe's life to supplement what's already printed in this book. And next up, if that wasn't enough, this is even better. Volume 1 of the Southern Literary Messenger. This is the magazine that Poe edited while he was in Richmond. It's actually his first job in journalism. This is where he got his start. This is where he published his first horror stories, his first science fiction, his first book reviews. And the book itself has a pretty strong provenance of having been passed down through major Poe collectors over the centuries, from H. Bradley Marden to Stephen Lowenthal to Susan Jaffe Taine. So it's a pretty important book here, in addition to having all these great Poe first printings. But you'll never guess what one of the previous owners taped inside the front cover. So here it is, right behind the big hunk of human hair right there. This is a receipt in Poe's handwriting and signed by Edgar Allan Poe for contributions to the Southern Literary Messenger for which he was paid $10. So while it's already pretty cool to have a receipt in Poe's handwriting, what makes it even better is that it's dated to April of 1845, so it's probably for contributions he made for the March 1845 issue of the Southern Literary Messenger. So that means he got paid $10 for his contributions for that month. What did he contribute to the March issue? Only one thing: The Raven. This very well could be a receipt for Edgar Allan Poe's most famous poem. And somebody scotch taped it into the front cover of a book. And that's where it turned up. And by the time we got it, the glues from that tape had eaten through the paper, discoloring it, turning it brown and even a little bit translucent. And we had to send the document to a paper conservator who was able to get out all the ink and even repair a tear and some holes in the process. And now you really can't tell anything ever happened. We still don't recommend taping your valuable Poe documents into books. But at least in this case, we were able to repair it. So the next time you find a rare old Edgar Allan Poe book, be sure to take a look inside and see what the previous owners left you. And if it's anything good, why not donate to the Poe Museum for our collection? If you don't find anything, you can still become a part of the Poe team by becoming a member or making a contribution at poemuseum.org. And until next time, thanks for joining us. And this is why Pluto is not allowed in the staff break room anymore.